Tani Owens struggled onto bus 23. Sprained ankle, one crutch under her arm, ripped jeans. There was only one seat left. She reached out. Then she saw him. An old man stood at the door, his trembling hand gripping the handrail, muttering, looking for a seat. No one was helping him. She looked at her swollen knee, then back at him. She didn't hesitate.
Sir, sit here.
Oh, I can't.
I'll give you my seat, please.
He sat down. His eyes welled up. His voice trembled.
You remind me of a good person.
Tani's knees buckled. She gripped the handrail tightly, bit her lip, and said nothing. She didn't know who this man was, and she had no idea that a small act of kindness could open a door she had never known about. Tanya stepped off the bus 2 stops early. Her ankle couldn't take the standing anymore. The crutch dug into her armpit with every step. She limped down Greylock Street, past the check-cashing place, past the laundromat with the flickering sign, past 2 kids drawing rockets on the sidewalk with chalk. South Philadelphia in the evening smelled like fried onions and wet concrete. She knew every crack in this pavement. Her building sat at the end of the block. Stanton Properties, 4 stories, brick the color of rust. The front door hadn't locked properly in months. On the entrance wall, a printed eviction notice. Not hers, a neighbor's. Mrs. Delgado, 3rd floor, 2 kids under 6. Tanya stopped, read it, pulled it down, folded it carefully, and slid it under Mrs. Delgado's door with a note. Don't panic. Call legal aid first thing tomorrow. T. She didn't knock, didn't wait, just turned around and started the climb. Studio apartment, 4th floor, no elevator. 1 step at a time. Crutch first, good foot next, swollen ankle last. 44 steps. She counted every one. The door opened to a room that was small but spotless. The kind of clean that says, I don't have much, but I take care of what I have. A shelf of library books, a second-hand lamp, 1 framed photo on the nightstand, a woman with Tanya's exact smile, holding a baby girl in a yellow blanket. Her mother. Tanya dropped onto the bed, leaned her crutch against the wall, and pulled off her shoe. Her ankle, purple, swollen, twice its normal size. She pressed it gently, and her jaw tightened. Her phone buzzed. Baby girl, you eatin'? Grace Owens, 68, Tanya's grandmother, the only family she had left. Yes, Grandma, I ate. She hadn't. Mm-hmm. You sound like your mama used to, all brave on the outside, falling apart on the inside. I'm fine, Grandma. You keep saying that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. They laughed. For a moment, the apartment didn't feel so empty. Grace asked about the ankle. Tanya said it was healing. It wasn't. Grace asked about money. Tanya said she was managing. She wasn't. Grace's diabetes medication had gone up. $340 a month now. Tanya sent $400 to North Carolina every month. That left almost nothing for herself. You keep giving, baby, Grace said softly. The Lord keeps a ledger, even when the bank don't. Tanya hung up, stared at the ceiling, didn't cry, just breathed. Morning, Carol's kitchen, breakfast rush. Tanya moved through the diner like she was born there. Coffee in one hand, plates stacked on the other, crutch hooked on the counter behind her. She'd learned to work without it during shifts. Limping was free. Complaining wasn't. Nina Brooks worked the register. Loud, blunt, loyal. The kind of friend who'd curse out your landlord and buy you dinner after. Girl, you're still limping. You look like a wounded soldier on a breakfast mission. Thanks, Nina. That's beautiful. I'm serious. You need a doctor. I need a paycheck. 2 different things. A regular, suit, briefcase, big appetite. Finished a $45 meal. Left 0 tip. Walked out without looking back. Nina slammed her palm on the counter. $45. Not even a single dollar? I'm going after him. Nina, don't. He can't just let it go. You can't squeeze kindness out of people who don't carry any. Nina stared at her. You're too good for this place, Tanya. You know that? Tanya didn't answer. She picked up the empty plate, tucked it against her hip, and moved to the next table. Her phone buzzed. A text from her second job. Night shift janitorial at a corporate office building downtown. Shift confirmed. 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. 12 more hours on that ankle. 5:38 a.m. The sun wasn't up. The hallway smelled like old carpet and someone else's cooking. Tanya climbed the stairs slowly. Crutch, step. Crutch, step. 44 stairs again. On her door, a printed notice. Rent increase. Effective in 30 days. $850 to $1,250. She peeled it off, read it twice, sat on her bed in the dark, crutch still in her hand. She didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't call anyone. She just sat there, doing the math in her head, watching every number come up short. Outside, the city was waking up. Buses running, people moving. Tanya Owens sat still. The free clinic on 9th Street had plastic chairs, fluorescent lights, and a 3-hour wait. Tanya sat with her crutch between her knees, ankle propped on her bag, watching the clock eat her shift. When they finally called her name, the doctor didn't sugarcoat it. The sprain is worse than it should be. You've been walking on it. I've been working on it. He looked at her. Miss Owens, you need an x-ray, possibly physical therapy. Without treatment, this could become chronic. You could lose full mobility in that ankle. How much? X-ray alone, around $800. Without insurance, I don't have insurance. Silence. What happens if I just keep going? The doctor paused. That pause said more than any answer could. It gets worse. Every day you stand on it, you're making it permanent. Tanya nodded, thanked him, grabbed her crutch, and left. No appointment made, no follow-up scheduled. She had a shift in 4 hours. The next morning, she went to Stanton's office. The property management company occupied a ground-floor suite 2 blocks from her building. Clean carpet, fake plants, a receptionist who didn't look up. Derek Stanton sat behind his desk. 41, pressed shirt. The kind of man who smiled with his mouth but never with his eyes. Miss Owens, what can I do for you? The rent increase. 40% in 30 days. That's not legal without proper notice. He leaned back. Market rate is market rate. You don't like it? The door's right there. I've been here 3 years, never missed a payment. You haven't fixed the heating since November. The hallway lights have been out for weeks. I have a right to... You have a right? He leaned forward. Let me tell you what you have. You have a month. And you should be grateful I haven't started eviction proceedings for that little stunt you pulled, telling Mrs. Delgado to call legal aid. Tanya's grip tightened on her crutch. You know about that? I know everything that happens in my building, Ms. Owens. Everything. He smiled. I've been doing this for 15 years. You think some girl on a crutch with a conscience is going to slow me down? Tanya stood. Her ankle screamed. Her face didn't.
I think a girl with the truth usually does.
She walked out. Slowly. She would not let him see her struggle. Outside, she sat on the bench. The air was cold. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from the kind of anger that has nowhere to go. Her phone rang. Nina.
How'd it go?
Tanya didn't answer right away. When she spoke, her voice cracked. Not dramatic, not loud, just cracked, like something inside shifted.
He knows I helped Mrs. Delgado. He's watching me, Nina. He wants me out.
Then come stay with me. Your apartment is smaller than mine. Exactly. We'll be so close, we'll have to get along. They laughed, but it didn't fix anything, and they both knew it. Tanya laid it out. The ankle, the clinic, the rent, Stanton, all of it. Every wall closing in at once. Nina went quiet. Then,
You don't deserve this, T. You know that, right?
Tanya didn't answer. 3 days later, same bus route, same seat, empty this time. Tanya sat down, rested her crutch against the window, closed her eyes, let the engine vibrate through her bones. For the first time in days, she sat without thinking about what came next. Across town, a different world entirely. A glass-walled penthouse office on the 32nd floor, fresh flowers on the desk, a view of the entire city skyline. Catherine Whitmore sat behind a desk that cost more than Tanya's rent for a year. Her phone rang. A care facility. Ms. Whitmore, your father wandered off again. He was found riding a city bus across town. He's safe now, but he keeps talking about someone. A girl. He says she gave him her seat. He says she stood for him. Catherine paused. What girl? We don't know, ma'am. He can't remember her name. He just keeps repeating the same thing. The girl who stood. Catherine set down her pen, looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, on some bus route, a girl her father couldn't stop talking about. Find her. Catherine Whitmore didn't wait. Within 48 hours, a private investigator pulled the transit camera footage from Route 23. The clip was 3 minutes and 14 seconds long. No sound. Just a grainy, wide-angle shot of a crowded bus. Catherine watched it at her desk. A girl on a crutch climbs aboard. She finds the last seat. She starts to sit. Then she sees an old man, confused, trembling, alone. She stands back up, gives him the seat. He grabs her hand. She doesn't pull away. The bus moves. She holds the pole with one arm, balances on one good foot, and stays with him. 3 stops. She steadies him when the bus lurches. She talks to him. Nobody else moves. Catherine watched it twice. Then she watched it a 3rd time, slower. She paused on the moment the girl looked at her own ankle, then back at the old man. The moment she chose him over herself. No audience, no reward. Just a decision made in silence. Catherine canceled her afternoon. The next evening, a black SUV rolled down Greylock Street. It looked like it had taken a wrong turn into another universe. Catherine stepped out. Tailored coat, heels that clicked on cracked pavement. She wasn't uncomfortable because of the neighborhood. She was uncomfortable because she hadn't been in a place like this in 20 years. She climbed 4 flights. No elevator. She thought about her father doing this alone, confused, wandering onto buses in neighborhoods he didn't recognize. She knocked on the door. Tanya opened it in scrubs, heading to her janitorial shift, crutch under her arm, hair pulled back, eyes tired but sharp. "Can I help you?" "My name is Catherine Whitmore. I believe you helped my father on a bus last week." Tanya's expression shifted. "The older gentleman? Is he all right?" "He has dementia. Early stage, but getting worse. He wanders, gets on buses, forgets where he's going. Most people ignore him. Some call the police. You gave him your seat." "Beat. You were on a crutch, and you stood for him." Tanya leaned against the doorframe. "He needed it more than I did." Catherine looked at her for a long moment, then reached into her coat and held out a business card. Thick paper, embossed lettering, a world Tanya had never touched. "I'd like to talk to you, properly, when you have time. Please call me." Tanya took the card. Catherine nodded, turned, and walked back down the 4 flights without another word. Tanya stood in the doorway, turning the card in her fingers. She closed the door and called Nina. "Some woman just showed up at my apartment. Said I helped her father on a bus." "Okay, and?" "She gave me her card. Catherine Whitmore." Nina went quiet. Then Tanya heard typing, fast. "Tanya." "What?" "Tanya, Catherine Whitmore. Whitmore and Callahan Holdings. This woman is worth $800 million. Silence. "Girl, 800 million. With an M." Tanya looked at the card, looked at her crutch leaning against the wall, looked at the rent increase notice still sitting on her nightstand. She didn't call. Not yet. That night, she called Grace instead. "Grandma, something strange happened today." She told her everything. Grace listened without interrupting. Then, "Baby, if someone powerful comes knocking and they come with manners, at least hear what they have to say. God doesn't always send help in the package you expect." Tanya hung up, set the card on the nightstand next to the photo of her mother. She stared at it until she fell asleep. Tanya waited 3 days before calling. Not because she wasn't curious. She was. But she needed to know this wasn't pity. She'd had enough people look at her with soft eyes and empty hands. She didn't need one more. Especially not one worth $800 million. They met at a small restaurant in Center City. No chandeliers, no dress code. Catherine's choice. Neutral ground. Catherine was already seated when Tanya walked in. She stood up. That small detail mattered. People with that kind of money rarely stood for anyone. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for picking somewhere I don't need a blazer." Catherine smiled. The first real one Tanya had seen from her. They ordered coffee. Catherine spoke first. "My father, Edward Whitmore, was a civil rights attorney. Started in the early 70s, marched in Selma. Spent 15 years defending families who had nothing against landlords who had everything. He believed the law was supposed to protect people, not punish them for being poor." She turned her coffee cup slowly. "He was brilliant, stubborn, the kind of man who'd take a case for free and fight it harder than the ones that paid. And about 5 years ago, he started forgetting. Small things first. Keys, appointments. Then bigger things. Where he lived. What year it was. Who I was." "Dementia?" "Early stage, but it's getting worse. Some days he's completely there. Tells you stories from 1968 like he's still standing in the courtroom. Other days, he walks out of the care facility in his pajamas and doesn't remember how to get home." Catherine looked directly at Tanya. "The day you met him on that bus, he'd been wandering for 3 hours, 6 buses. He didn't know which one to take. His shoes were on the wrong feet. He was dehydrated. The facility told me later he'd been crying that morning calling for his wife. She passed 11 years ago. He still waits for her. Tanya set her coffee down. 3 hours on 6 buses. Dozens of people saw him. Not one stopped. Not one asked if he was okay. And then you, on a crutch, with a sprained ankle, barely able to stand yourself. You got up and gave him your seat. You held his arm for 3 stops. You spoke to him like a human being. Not a problem to deal with. A person. Catherine's voice stayed even. Her hands didn't. Tanya, I haven't been a good daughter. My father wanted me to follow him into advocacy, public interest, fighting for people. I chose business. We argued. Then we stopped talking. I kept telling myself there was time. Then the dementia came, and some days he looks at me and doesn't know my name. She straightened in her chair. You showed him something I haven't given him in years. I'm not here to pay you for that. I can't. But watching that bus footage reminded me of who he used to be and who I forgot to become. Tanya didn't rush to fill the silence. She sat with it, the way people do when they know some words need room to land. So what exactly are you offering? She said. Catherine placed a folder on the table. Whitmore and Callahan is launching an affordable housing initiative. 3 neighborhoods. South Philadelphia is one of them. I need someone on my team who knows what the word affordable actually means. Not from a textbook, from a life. Tanya opened the folder. Job title, salary, benefits. Community Development Associate, full-time, $52,000 a year, health insurance included. Start in 2 weeks. Tanya read the number again. 52,000. She currently made 23, combined. 2 jobs, on a crutch. I didn't finish college, she said quietly. I'm not hiring a diploma. I'm hiring someone who knows the difference between a housing plan that works and one that just looks good in a boardroom. Tanya closed the folder. I need a few days. Take whatever you need. That night, Tanya sat on her bed. The folder on one side, the rent increase notice on the other, her crutch leaning against the wall between them. She called Nina. She offered me a job. A job? What kind of job? Community development, affordable housing, $52,000 a year. Silence. Then Nina screamed so loud, Tanya pulled the phone from her ear. Take it! Take it right now! Call her back before she changes her mind! What if I can't do it, Nina? I've never worked in an office. I don't own a single piece of professional clothing. I don't know how to read a development plan. Tanya, you run a diner floor on a sprained ankle. You work 2 jobs. You manage your grandmother's prescriptions from 800 miles away. You file your own taxes. You can figure out an office. Tanya laughed, but the fear sat heavy. Her whole life she'd been in rooms where she served. The thought of being in a room where she sat at the table, it felt foreign, like she'd need a passport to get there. She called Grace. Grandma, something happened. Something I didn't see coming. She told her everything. Grace listened without a single interruption. Then, softly, Fear is just your future knocking too loud, baby. Open the door anyway. Monday morning, Whitmore and Callahan Holdings. Glass tower in Center City. Marble lobby. Tanya walked through the front door on her crutch. Pressed black pants, a blouse borrowed from Nina, her grandmother's gold earrings. The security guard looked at her twice. She didn't look away. 14th floor. The elevator opened to an open office. Floor-to-ceiling windows, clean desks, people dressed like the furniture. Everything matched. Everything was quiet. Everything cost money.
Catherine met her at the reception. "Welcome. Let me show you your desk." Paul Callahan stood near the conference room, 53, silver hair, watch that probably cost more than Tanya's rent for a year. He shook her hand, smiled politely, but his eyes traveled. Crutch. Resume on the table. Then Catherine. One look. It said everything it needed to. Catherine caught it. "She starts today, Paul. That's not a discussion." He raised both hands. "Didn't say a word." "You didn't need to." Tanya's desk sat near the window. The view stretched across the entire city. Rooftops, bridges, the river, and somewhere down there, the neighborhoods she'd walked her whole life. She'd never seen them from up here. She took out her phone, snapped a photo, sent it to Grace. A minute later, Grace replied, "Your mama is smiling right now, baby. I know it." Tanya set the phone down, looked at the view, looked at her crutch resting against a desk with her name on a placard. She took a breath and got to work. Tanya learned fast. Not because she had experience, she didn't, but because she paid attention the way people do when they know the chance might not come again. She read reports at night, asked questions in meetings that made the senior staff pause. She walked the neighborhoods the firm was targeting for development, the same blocks she'd grown up on, and she saw things the spreadsheets couldn't show. A daycare that would be displaced, a grocery store that was the only one for 6 blocks, an elderly couple who didn't speak English and had no idea a developer was circling their building. One afternoon, she found a proposal for a new, affordable housing unit, priced at $1,800 a month. She circled the number in red, left it on Catherine's desk with one line written in the margin. Affordable? For who? Catherine read it, didn't say a word, revised the entire plan the next day. 2 weeks in, Catherine invited Tanya to visit Ed at his care facility. It was a good day, one of the clear ones. He was sitting by the window, dressed neatly, hands calm. When Tanya walked in, he looked up. His face changed. "I know you." "Hi, Mr. Whitmore." "You're the girl who stood." Tanya sat beside him. He held her hand the way he had on the bus, gently, like holding something he was afraid to lose. They talked. He told her about a case from 1968. A family, a mother and 3 children, lost their home to a landlord who falsified lease violations. Ed took the case pro bono, fought it for months, lost. "Biggest regret of my career," he said quietly. "I think about that family every week. I couldn't save them." Tanya squeezed his hand. "Sounds like someone I know." He looked at her. For a moment, his eyes were completely clear. "Don't lose yours." That evening, Tanya scheduled her first physical therapy appointment. Insurance covered it. She sent Grace a check, bigger than usual. Her crutch was still there, but she was learning to lean on it less. Everything felt steady, almost safe, almost good. Almost. It started with a piece of paper. Tanya came home after work, still on her crutch, but lighter now, moving with something that almost looked like hope. She climbed the 4 flights. Crutch, step, crutch, step. 44 stairs. She barely counted them anymore. Then she saw it. A formal eviction notice taped to her door. Filed by Stanton Properties, LLC. Grounds. Lease violation. Unauthorized occupancy and property interference. She read it twice, 3 times. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't move. Unauthorized occupancy. She lived alone.
Always had. Property interference. That meant one thing: helping Mrs. Delgado. Sliding a note under a door, telling a neighbor to call legal aid. That was her crime. 15 days to respond or vacate. The next morning, she went straight to Stanton's office. Same clean carpet, same fake plants, same receptionist who didn't look up. Stanton was different this time. Not smug, calculated. He leaned back in his chair like a man who'd already won. "Ms. Owens, didn't expect to see you again so soon." "The eviction notice. Unauthorized occupancy. I live alone. You know that." "Our records indicate otherwise." "Your records are wrong." He tilted his head. "Are they? Because what I have here says you've been organizing tenants, distributing materials, interfering with property management operations. That's a lease violation, Ms. Owens." "I gave my neighbor a phone number." "You gave her legal aid's phone number. You told 3 other tenants to withhold maintenance complaints until they could file them together. You've been busy." Tanya gripped her crutch. "People have a right to know their options. People have a right to follow their lease." He opened a folder on his desk. Inside, printouts of the note she left under Mrs. Delgado's door. A list of tenants she'd spoken to. Dates. Times. He'd been watching her, carefully, for weeks. "I hear you've got a new job," he said. "Whitmore and Callahan. Impressive. Fancy office. Big salary." He closed the folder. "You can afford to move now." "This isn't about the money." "No, it's about the building." He stood, walked to the window. "I'm selling this property, Miss Owens. The whole building, every unit. And your little advocacy project has been slowing my timeline." "Selling to who?" He didn't answer. But Tanya already knew. This wasn't the landlord raising rent. This was a plan. And she was in the way. She left without another word. Walked 2 blocks. Sat on the same bench she'd sat on the last time Stanton pushed her around. The cold hit different now. She wasn't just angry. She was scared. That evening, she dug deeper. Public records, city council meeting minutes, rezoning applications. It took her 3 hours on her laptop, but she found it. Derek Stanton, a city councilman named Ward, and a developer named Garrett Cole. 3 names connected by one deal. Rezoned 6 residential buildings in South Philadelphia for mixed-use commercial development. Estimated value, $3.5 million. Tanya's building was on the list. The evictions weren't personal. They were strategic. Clear the tenants, sell the land, split the money. Tanya brought the information to Catherine the next morning, laid it out on the conference table, documents, rezoning filings, the eviction notice. Catherine read through it slowly. Her face tightened. "This is predatory. Textbook displacement." "I know. But if we go after Stanton directly, it looks like corporate interference. A billion-dollar company bullying a small property manager. The press would eat us alive, and it would kill the housing initiative before we even break ground." "So what do we do?" Catherine looked at her. "We have to be smart, Tanya. I want to help, but I can't blow up everything we're building." Paul Callahan appeared in the doorway. He'd been listening. "This is a personal matter. It shouldn't involve the company." Tanya looked at him, then at Catherine. The silence between them said more than any argument could. She left the folder on the table, walked back to her desk, sat down and stared at the city she'd never been able to see from above until 4 weeks ago. It was still the same city, and it still worked the same way. 2 days later, it got worse. Stanton filed a formal complaint with Whitmore and Callahan's HR department. The allegation? Catherine Whitmore had hired Tanya improperly. Personal favoritism, no formal recruitment process, and a conflict of interest. The conflict? Tanya's apartment building sat within the company's South Philadelphia development zone. Stanton argued that Tanya had insider access to information that directly affected her own housing situation. It was a lie. But it was the kind of lie that wore a suit and carried a briefcase. Just enough truth at the edges to make people uncomfortable. Catherine was pulled into an internal review. Legal asked her to step back from direct contact with Tanya until the review concluded. The Affordable Housing Initiative, the whole reason Tanya was hired, was placed on a temporary hold. In one move, Stanton had cut the line between them. Tanya found out through an email, not even a phone call. Just a formal HR notice. Pending internal review. No action required from you at this time. No action required. She sat in her apartment that night, the eviction notice on the nightstand, the HR email on her phone, her crutch against the wall. The business card Catherine had given her that first evening, still sitting next to her mother's photo. She picked up the card, turned it in her fingers. She didn't call Catherine, didn't call Nina, didn't call Grace. She opened her laptop, typed Philadelphia tenant rights into the search bar, then illegal eviction, Pennsylvania, then retaliatory eviction defense. She read for 4 hours, took notes in a composition book, the same kind she used in high school. Page after page. Statutes, case precedents, filing deadlines. If nobody was going to fight this for her, she'd fight it herself. The city was quiet. The apartment was dark. The only light came from her laptop screen, casting shadows across the room. Tanya Owens, on a crutch, in a studio apartment with 15 days left, building her own case, one page at a time. Tanya walked into the legal aid office on Spring Garden Street with a composition book full of notes and a folder she'd organized herself. Statutes tabbed, timelines highlighted, evidence sorted by date. The attorney assigned to her case was young, 2 years out of law school, tired eyes, good heart. His name was James Wheeler. He flipped through Tanya's folder and looked up at her. You did all this yourself? I had 4 hours and no other options. He nodded slowly. Here's the truth, Miss Owens. Tenant cases against landlords with political connections, they don't usually go well in housing court. Judges see 100 of these a month. Most tenants don't even show up. I'm showing up. I can see that. He closed the folder. But we're going to need more than your case. If Stanton's doing this to you, he's doing it to others. We need a pattern. That weekend, Tanya went door to door. Apartment 2B. A retired bus driver whose heat hadn't worked since October. He'd filed 3 maintenance requests, all ignored. Apartment 3A. Mrs. Delgado. 2 children. She'd received her own eviction notice 2 weeks after calling legal aid. Same language, same fabricated grounds. Apartment 3C. A single mother of 4 who'd been charged a $500 inspection fee that didn't exist in her lease. When she refused to pay, Stanton threatened to report her to Child Services. Apartment 4B. An elderly man, 81 years old, partially deaf, who'd signed a rent increase he didn't understand because nobody explained it to him. Tanya sat with each of them, listened, wrote everything down, collected copies of leases, letters, photos, cracked walls, mold in bathrooms, exposed wiring covered with tape. She organized it all. Same composition book, same careful handwriting. 12 tenants, 12 stories, One pattern. She brought it back to Wheeler. He looked through it for a long time. This is good, Tanya. This is really good. Nina came through next. A regular at Carol's Kitchen, a clerk from City Hall, sat at the counter one Tuesday morning, talking on his phone. Nina was wiping tables nearby and heard a name she recognized. Stanton. She stopped wiping. The clerk was talking about a rezoning application, fast-tracked, unusual approval, connected to a councilman named Ward and a developer named Garrett Cole. 3 buildings already cleared, 3 more pending. Tanya's building was one of them. Nina didn't say anything. She pulled out her phone under the counter and typed every word she could catch. Names, dates, building addresses. She texted Tanya that afternoon. Got something. Call me when you're off. Don't ask how I got it. That evening, they spread it all out on Tanya's bed. Nina's notes, Tanya's evidence, Wheeler's legal research, the public records Tanya had already pulled. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Stanton wasn't just a bad landlord. He was part of a coordinated effort to displace tenants for profit, with political cover. The following week, Catherine called. The internal review had concluded. She was cleared. No wrongdoing, no favoritism, no conflict of interest. The housing initiative was back on track. She met Tanya at a coffee shop. Not the office. Somewhere private. I couldn't reach out during the review. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize. You had your own fight. Catherine paused. I can't go after Stanton publicly. Not yet. If Whitmore and Callahan gets involved directly, it gives him exactly what he wants. A story about a big corporation crushing a small business owner. But I can do this. She slid a card across the table. A name. A phone number. Our firm's pro bono legal team. Off the record. They'll work with your legal aid attorney. And I'm giving you access to public housing records that show Stanton's history. This isn't his first building. He's done this at least 3 times before. Tanya took the card. Why are you doing this? Catherine looked at her. My father spent his life fighting men like Stanton. I spent mine pretending those men didn't exist. She picked up her coffee. You reminded me that they do. Tanya visited Ed that Sunday. He was sitting in the garden at the facility, face turned toward the sun. Not a clear day. He didn't recognize her right away. But when she sat beside him and took his hand, he didn't let go. They sat in silence for a long time. Then Ed spoke, quietly, to no one in particular. Someone has to stand. Someone always has to stand. Tanya held his hand tighter. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Philadelphia Housing Court, 8:45 a.m., room 4B. The room was small. No cameras, no gallery, no drama. Just fluorescent lights, a wooden bench, and a judge's desk that had seen 10,000 cases and forgotten 9,000 of them. Judge Harold Bennett presided, 62, reading glasses, the kind of face that had stopped being impressed a long time ago. Stanton sat on one side with his attorney, a man in a dark suit who carried himself like this was routine, because for them, it was. Evict, file, win, move on. They'd done it before. Tanya sat on the other side, crutch leaning against the table, composition book in front of her. James Wheeler beside her, young, underpaid, but prepared. Behind Tanya, in the last row, sat Mrs. Delgado, the retired bus driver from 2B, the single mother from 3C, the elderly man from 4B. They hadn't been asked to come. They came anyway. Nina sat behind them, arms crossed, jaw set. Stanton's attorney went first. Calm, professional, almost bored. Your Honor, the respondent has violated the terms of her lease on multiple occasions. She has engaged in unauthorized distribution of materials to other tenants. She has interfered with property management operations. She has encouraged collective action that disrupts the orderly management of the building. The landlord is within his legal right to pursue eviction. Wheeler stood. Your Honor, the petitioner's claims are retaliatory. Every alleged violation cited by Stanton Properties occurred after Ms. Owens exercised her legal right to inform a fellow tenant of public resources. There is no lease clause that prohibits a tenant from sharing a phone number. Judge Bennett looked at both of them over his glasses. I'll hear from the tenant. Tanya stood, picked up her crutch, walked to the front of the room slowly. She set the composition book on the edge of the desk and opened it. She didn't raise her voice, didn't perform. She spoke the way she always did, clear, steady, like someone who had practiced the truth so many times it came out effortless. Your Honor, I've lived in that building for 3 years. I've never missed a rent payment, not once. I work 2 jobs, a diner and a night janitorial shift. I pay my rent before I buy groceries. She opened her folder. In 3 years, I have submitted 9 maintenance requests. 2 for heating failures, 3 for plumbing, 1 for a broken lock on the building's front entrance, 1 for exposed wiring in the hallway. Not one has been addressed. She placed the documents on the table. Photos, maintenance logs, copies of every request, dated, signed, unanswered. The rent increase I received, $850 to $1,250, was issued with 18 days' notice. Philadelphia law requires 60. That increase is not legal. She placed the notice on the table. I also spoke with 12 other tenants in the building. Their experiences are the same. Ignored requests, fabricated fees, threats of eviction when they ask questions. She placed the tenant testimonies on the table, one by one. 12 folders, each labeled, each signed. Stanton's attorney shifted in his seat. Stanton did not move, but the color left his face slowly, like a tide pulling back. Wheeler stood again. Your Honor, we have one additional piece of evidence. He placed a laptop on the table, pressed play. The transit camera footage from Route 23. No sound, just the image. A crowded bus, a girl on a crutch, an old man at the door. She gives him her seat, holds his arm, stays standing on a swollen ankle for 3 stops, while the rest of the bus looks at their phones. This footage, Wheeler said, was shared in a local community group on social media. Within 24 hours of the post gaining attention, Mr. Stanton filed an HR complaint against Ms. Owens' employer, Whitmore and Callahan Holdings, alleging favoritism and conflict of interest. He pulled up the dates, side by side. The social media post, March 14th. Stanton's HR complaint, March 15th. The eviction notice was filed 3 days later. Not because Ms. Owens violated her lease, because she suddenly had a connection to someone powerful. And Mr. Stanton needed her gone before that connection could be used against him. Wheeler looked at the judge. This is not a lease violation, Your Honor. This is retaliation. The room was still. Stanton's attorney asked for a recess. Judge Bennett didn't blink. Denied. Then the courtroom door opened. Catherine Whitmore walked in. Not in a power suit, not with an entourage. Just a coat, a folder under her arm, and the look of a woman who'd made a decision she wasn't going to unmake. She took the witness stand. Ms. Whitmore, you're here voluntarily? I am, Your Honor. State your relationship to the respondent. Tanya Owens is an employee of Whitmore and Callahan Holdings, I hired her personally. On what basis? Catherine paused, looked at Tanya, then back at the judge. I hired her because she's the only person in this city who saw my father, a 74-year-old man with dementia, lost on a bus, unable to remember his own address, and treated him like he mattered. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know who I was. She was injured, exhausted, on her way to one of 2 jobs that barely covered her rent. And she gave him her seat. The courtroom was silent. Tanya Owens didn't come to my company because she needed saving. She came because she had something we needed. Perspective. Integrity. The willingness to stand up when it costs you something. Catherine looked directly at Stanton, then at the judge. Kindness isn't weakness. It's the rarest kind of courage. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound was the court reporter's fingers pausing on the keys. Judge Bennett removed his glasses, set them on the desk, looked at the evidence, looked at Stanton, looked at Tanya. Eviction. Dismissed. The petitioner's claims are without legal merit and are consistent with retaliatory action against the tenant. He picked up his pen. Stanton Properties is hereby ordered to undergo a full inspection by the Philadelphia Housing Authority. The rent increase is voided, insufficient notice under city ordinance, and this court is referring the matter of the rezoning applications connected to this property to the district attorney's office for further investigation. He closed the file. We're adjourned. Stanton stood. His attorney whispered something to him. He didn't respond. He picked up his briefcase and walked out of the room without looking at anyone. Tanya stood in the hallway outside the courtroom. Her hands were shaking. Her crutch was trembling against the floor. Nina reached her first, wrapped both arms around her, held on. They didn't say anything. They didn't need to. Behind them, Mrs. Delgado wiped her eyes. The man from 2B nodded slowly. The mother from 3C held her youngest child on her hip and watched Tanya with the look of someone who had just seen proof that the system could work, if someone was brave enough to push it. That afternoon, they sat at Carol's kitchen. Catherine, Tanya, and Nina, in a booth by the window, coffee in mismatched mugs. Catherine looked around the diner. Vinyl seats, cracked tile, a menu board with letters missing. She picked up her mug and took a sip like she'd been coming here for years. Nina brought her a slice of pie she didn't order. On the house. Consider it a legal victory discount. Catherine laughed. Tanya hadn't heard her laugh like that before. Loose, unguarded, real. Catherine set down her fork. We're expanding the Community Development Division. I want you to lead a new program. Tenant advocacy embedded directly into our housing projects. Before we build, before we break ground, someone sits with the people already living there and asks the questions nobody else asks. Tanya looked at her. You want me to be the person who says, affordable for who? Every single time. Tanya looked out the window. The same street she'd walked 1,000 times. The same bus stop where she'd climbed onto Route 23 with a crutch and a sprained ankle and $38. Okay, she said. Yeah, okay. Nina slapped the table. That's my girl. Weeks passed. Tanya started physical therapy, twice a week, covered by insurance. The swelling went down. The pain faded. One morning, she walked from her apartment to the bus stop without the crutch. Just walked. 2 good feet on solid ground. She stood at the stop and looked down at her ankles and almost laughed. Grace flew up from North Carolina. First time she'd ever visited Philadelphia.
Tanya picked her up at the airport. No crutch, new coat, same earrings Grace had lent her on her first day at the office. They went to Whitmore and Callahan. Grace stood at Tanya's desk, touched the window, looked out at the city spread below them. Every rooftop, every street, the whole world Tanya had grown up in, seen from above for the first time. Your mama would have stood on that bus too, you know. I know, Grandma. That's why I did. Grace didn't say anything else. She just held Tanya's hand and looked at the view. Sunday, the care facility. Ed was sitting in his chair by the window. Not a clear day. His eyes were distant. His hands rested in his lap like they'd forgotten what to do. Tanya walked in. No crutch. He looked up. He didn't say her name. He didn't remember it. But he smiled. You're the one who stood. Tanya sat beside him, took his hand. Yeah, Mr. Whitmore, I'm the one who stood. They sat together until the light moved across the floor and the room turned gold. 6 months later, Tanya's tenant advocacy program had helped 130 families in South Philadelphia stay in their homes. 130 doors that didn't close. Mrs. Delgado's apartment had working heat for the first time in 2 years. Her kids slept without coats on. The retired bus driver in 2B got his plumbing fixed. He sent Tanya a thank you card written in shaky handwriting. She pinned it above her desk. Stanton Properties was under investigation. Derek Stanton's property management license suspended. Garrett Cole's rezoning deal dead. The councilman named Ward quietly resigned from the housing committee. No press conference, no statement, just gone. Catherine and Ed reconnected. She visited him every Sunday. Some days he knew her, some days he didn't. But she showed up, every time. The Route 23 bus, evening, same route. Tanya stood near the back, not because there were no seats. There was one open, right next to her. A pregnant woman stepped on, tired eyes, heavy bag, looking for somewhere to sit. Tanya smiled. Here, take my seat. The woman sat down. Thank you. Of course. Tanya stood. 2 good feet, no crutch. The bus moved forward. Outside the window, the city passed by. The same streets, the same blocks, the same world. But something was different now. Someone had stood. And it mattered. Kindness is not weakness, okay? It's literally the bravest thing you can do. One small act, just one, can change everything. Don't sleep on being good to people. For real, for real. The universe is watching, even when nobody else is. Kindness is not weakness, okay? It's literally the bravest thing you can do. One small act, just one, can change everything. Don't sleep on being good to people. For real, for real. The universe is watching, even when nobody else is.